Good afternoon. My name is Carol, and I'm here on behalf of the Senior Counsel Division. And I have the honor today of presenting someone that probably doesn't need an introduction, but we do have today with us Kaylee Lopez, who is going to talk on AARP, making a difference in Hawaii. Kaylee is the state director and has been for about 3 years, and she became the director just in time for the pandemic, which probably really was a challenging job, but I know she was certainly up to the challenge. Before that, she was a lobbyist with what I call Alston Hunt Floyd Ing, but it's also known as Denton's nowadays. And before that, where she and I met originally was when she was the director of the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs. And we spent many an hour at the legislature on behalf of DCCA doing testimony, saving seats for each other and often going late into the night. But I think Kaylee really enjoyed that legislative experience. So thank you again, Kaylee, for joining us today. And without further ado, please educate us. Thanks.
Thank you. Aloha, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. As Carol said, we go back, as do Pat and I, in our years, and just really am thankful that you were willing to give me some time here to share a bit about AARP. One of the things that what I'd like to go over with you is a little bit about AARP's history, kind of what our vision, purpose is. And more importantly, who we are and what we do. I'm going to be sharing the resources. So I'm going to go through some of these slides pretty quickly because I want to make sure I get to the resources in particular. But AARP really is a social impact organization for members that are 50 plus. So here in Hawaii, we have about 140,000 AARP members. Across the country, there's 38 million members with AARP. We basically look and seek to try to be a reliable source of information on issues that are critical to older Americans. And we try to seek to really engage our members and partners in advocacy, education, and community service on behalf of older adults and their families. And through our national office, we're also able to offer membership services and benefits. Nearly everything that we do locally, though, is accomplished through our partnership with our local volunteers and community partners like yourselves. An important quote from our founder is, "The human contribution is an essential ingredient. It is only in the giving of oneself to others that we truly live." Her philosophy, Dr. Ethel Percy Anders, continues to drive AARP's somewhat unique structure in the approach of work that we do. AARP began 60 years ago, and our founder, who was retired school principal, as I said, Dr. Ethel Percy Andrus, was an incredible woman who was really ahead of her time. She was highly educated for the time and for her gender back in those days. She went to college at a time when few people, especially women, received higher education. She earned her bachelor's in philosophy at University of Chicago in 1903 and a bachelor's in science from Lewis Institute, which is now the Illinois Institute of Technology, in 1918. She was the first woman in the state of California to serve as a school principal. And while she was serving in that role, she got her master's and doctorate. Early in her career, she led a racially integrated high school at a time when separation of races and genders was more the norm. Even back in the 1930s, she valued diversity and inclusion. And that remains really an important value for us at AARP. Interestingly enough, when she was in her 60s and left her job to become a caregiver for her mother, And after her mother recovered, she started volunteer work and helping retired teachers. Well, it was during that time that a pivotal moment occurred where she found a former teacher living in a chicken coop. Her passion to bring financial and health security to all retired Americans really resulted in the start of AARP. So Dr. Andrus, I still, I've got, let's see, she was 73 when she started up AARP. So there's a lot we all still have to do. I know I got another 12 years before I hit her age. But again, she proved that one person can make an enormous difference. And she's got a legacy of an amazing organization like AARP to show for it. AARP, our vision and purpose for that was inspired by Dr. Andrus in 1958 is still important today. When we say it, our purpose isn't to empower people to choose how they live as they age. Our vision is for society in which all people live with dignity and purpose to fulfill their goals and dreams, and our values are surrounded by impact, innovation, inclusion, humanity, and empowerment, and honesty. And these values are critical in our work with the public in general, but our members, because of the concerns that so many people have around who they can turn to as a trusted source. I'm going to cover real briefly our structure. So AARP generally is a C4 organization. We have the AARP Foundation, which provides a lot of the charitable work like tax aid, which I'll cover later. And then our for-profit AARP subsidiary, which is where, many of this things that support the organization are funded through the for-profit subsidiary, which includes royalties, ads that are purchased in our bulletin. Again, these were important structures for AARP to be able to do the advocacy work we do, but also continue to do a good bit of the nonprofit work that AARP is known for. Across the country, there are state offices like the one here in Hawaii, but also in the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. Many of these organizations have volunteers such as we do, but we also work very closely with AARP chapters and the National Retired Teachers Association network. So again, it's a way that AARP makes sure that there's a local connection through all the states. We have a very small staff of 5 people. It's not a lot, but as I mentioned, everything we do results from partnerships between the staff, volunteers, and community partners. As well as we've got a lot of resources that's provided to us nationally. You may know some of these folks. And importantly, we have our executive council. So this is a volunteer group that provides really, for our purposes, assistance and direction and helping us with our strategic goals and identifying and making sure that AARP doesn't lose touch with really community in understanding what those needs are. So overall, we have about 400 AARP volunteers in Hawaii. A good number of them, about half, are volunteers for our state office. The others help with driver safety and the tax aid program. Again, you may know some of these folks. Then, so let me get into kind of what our work is. There's 3 broad priorities that we have in the work that we do: health security, financial resilience, and livable communities. So for health security, big part of that for AARP, and you may have seen and know of this, is really preserving and defending Medicare and Medicaid. And in that regard, you know, a big part of our work is working with our federal delegation in that type of work. But it's trying to make sure that people can also, in the health security area, get the kind of help they need to foster their ability to receive services in the homes and community in the care of a loved one. Financial resilience is another important one. As you hopefully know, AARP works really hard to protect Social Security. Also, you saw me last month if you participated, retirement savings. And a big part of that is also fraud prevention. That's a really important area that we're focusing on because so many people are regrettably the victims of fraud. Livable communities is an area that maybe not as many folks are familiar with our work. It has to do with age-friendly communities where we look at multimodal transportation. We're now looking at getting more involved in affordable housing, areas like digital literacy and such, and I'll explain those a little bit more going forward. The other thing as part of our mission is we do advocacy work both at the federal, state, and local level for issues that impact those who are 50 plus and really society as a whole. Community service is really a big part of what our volunteers do in getting out there to actually provide and make a difference in the community, whether it's helping in food banks, helping other community organizations be successful. And then information is really just our trying to help people get access to information that's going to be useful to them and their families in hopefully moving forward and understanding what their needs are around the other areas are talked about. So legislatively, you know, as Carol mentioned, this was an area that I was very involved in. But for AARP on a federal level, I spoke of some of those, but another big important one that we've especially been working on for quite a while is how to lower prescription drug costs. And a big part of that has been AARP's advocacy for Medicare to negotiate directly on the issue of pharmaceutical benefits. Caregiver tax credits is really around, you know, those family members who are taking care of a loved one. Statewide, again, I mentioned the retirement savings program that we were able to pass this year. Other areas that we are involved in at the state level, again, is affordable housing, age discrimination. Those of you, probably a young set, but those of you in your 70s will be happy to hear that one of the laws that we were able to help change is those 70 and older had to get our license, get your license renewed every 2 years, unlike everyone else who only has to do it every 4 years, and that's been changed. So looking at issues as such as that, long-term care ombudsman, if you haven't had a presentation on that, they struggled for years with really one paid long-term care ombudsman for the entire state of Hawaii with a few volunteers. This year, with the budget surplus and I guess a lot of interest in making a difference, the long-term care ombudsman will now have 6 ombudsmen for the entire state, which is about what it needs. And then locally on the county level, we've been focusing on a lot of other areas as well that make a difference for people in their communities and again around livable communities. I'm going to go through the retirement savings program somewhat quickly. This was a program that AARP has tried to pass for 7 years. About 200,000 private sector workers do not have access to retirement savings through their employer. And this is predominantly because they're working for some of the smaller businesses where the cost for providing retirement savings, 401k and such to their employees, is either too difficult or too complex. One of the things we're clear about, though, is if people are able to get retirement savings through their employer, they're 20 times more likely to actually save for retirement. And that's a significant issue for Hawaii. So again, just a brief slide and overview. Hawaii is the 15th state to pass such legislation. And again, for the programs that have been up and running for quite some time, the average earner is $25,000 a year, $29,000 a year. And again, those aren't necessarily folks that, fund managers and such are necessarily going to try to seek to provide services to. So we, through our work and the task force that was formed last year, basically determined that without any additional impact or need or focus, that really the impact to Hawaii is about 1.7 billion in government assistance over 20 years if kupuna retire into poverty. So it's clear that it's not just an issue for older adults, it's everyone who's having to pay taxes. But again, it's really around what I believe is an important part of Hawaii is how we care for one another. On the issue of financial resilience, I mentioned our tax aid. So the AARP Foundation actually runs the tax aid program. It's a free program that assists older adults and low-income families. We also have numerous financial workshops, excuse me, including Think of Your Future series, Women's Financial Conference, and how to start your own business. Although that one we haven't done as much lately, although clearly after the pandemic, that's an area of focus that might be important. And a really important area is our Speakers Bureau. We have trained volunteers who can provide information on various issues. On the work and jobs, we say emerging because that's not an area that we've done as much, although there is an area of importance for AARP. A signature event that we have coming up. So we just finished a virtual workshop, a 5-week virtual workshop on Think of Your Future. So this will be our first in-person session. So if you have members or folks on Maui, we'll be doing this starting July 30th. And the focus of it will be 10 steps to get ready for retirement, Social Security for retirees, and Medicare basics. Often though, when we also do this type of workshop, we'll add investing basics and investing for your retirement. Usually this is a good target, this type of workshop for someone who's maybe about 10 years out from retiring. This next piece is really important. I want you to, if you can take a screenshot or we can provide that information, Carol and Pat, to you via email if you want to send it out to your members. But when it comes to financial resilience, these key AARP resources are really helpful. And I think not enough people take the time to tap into them. So you've got a retirement calculator, again, around, how much we're going to need. And here's the challenge, folks. Believe it or not, it's not going to be unusual going forward to have more and more people living into their 80s, 90s, and 100s. So when you calculate your retirement, you're going to want to be clear that for many of us, we're probably going to live a lot longer than we thought, than our parents did. Again, also Social Security, having an understanding of what that is. So again, I'm just leaving this up for a little bit so that folks know that these resources are available. Importantly enough, on the work and jobs, we have a special section specifically for veterans. So those who are coming out of the military and want to get some assistance related to work in the civilian sector. And as I indicated earlier, fraud is really a big issue. I personally actually feel like it's a little bit of an epidemic. Again, that's my personal opinion. The degree to which people are victims of fraud is very high. So one of our focus in education with the community is we plan local fraud workshops and conferences. We do a shredding event. So this photo is from our annual shredding events, which we haven't had for about 2 years now. But also importantly, we've got our national Fraud Watch Network, really a key resource. It's free to join. People who join get a bi-monthly email that deconstructs the latest scams. There's also an interactive fraud map where people can document the latest scam they've been approached by. But the other thing is there's a free hotline where people can get, it's staffed by volunteers. People can call and try to get information about how to get help, what to do next. So the numbers are up there for people to call. The Fraud Watch Network, I would definitely recommend. Again, especially if you have family and friends, know of people who have been victims of a scam. Along those lines, we've got a couple of events coming up in August and September. We've got Brett Johnson, who is the godfather of the dark web, meaning he was a con artist that utilized the internet for a lot of fraud activities for many years. After basically serving his time in prison, he's turned around and is now doing work like this. So AARP Hawaii has him coming over. That'll be an important conference. The other thing that is really a big interest and a lot of people have an interest in is our shredding events and food drive that we'll be doing in Wailuku, Hilo, and Aiea. Again, very popular because it's a safe way for people to be able to shred and destroy financial information or information that could potentially be used for fraudulent purposes if it were just thrown in the garbage. On the health front, so health security is another important area, and I would say it's a critical area going forward. I hope there's more that we and other organizations are going to be able to do around this, because I do see that healthcare and long-term care is going to become a crisis if it isn't already, but especially here in Hawaii. So again, as I indicated, working on and protecting Medicare and Medicaid has been important, but an important thing that we do as well is supporting family caregivers, people who are caring for their older relatives or a loved one, and foster their ability to receive services in their homes and in the communities. During the pandemic, this especially became very important, and we engaged in health programs, especially because a lot couldn't be done in person. So we did a lot of virtual activities, like a healthy cooking show, Tai Chi, Zumba, those types of things for, again, maintaining health. And again, at least with our Speakers Bureau, one of the things that organizations can request is a presentation on the 6 pillars of brain health. We have a signature event coming up. It's a conference here in Honolulu in October at the Honolulu at Ala Moana Hotel. So again, for any of these events where I indicated the signature events, you can go to aarp.org/Hawaii or / near you and look at the upcoming events. So these dates aren't out there yet, so I'm giving you advance notice about them. But as these events get closer, going to our website is going to be the best way to actually be able to register for these programs. The other thing, as Carol mentioned, I kind of got hired just a few months before COVID came on, and AARP, like many organizations, had to shift and focus on the statewide shutdown. So we were all required to work from home as well. But we were able to mobilize lots of our shared organizations who were all facing challenges in how to meet the needs for kupuna as well as the community at large. It really brought for us though, it brought to our attention the fact that many of the smaller long-term care facilities were struggling to get the necessary personal protective equipment and COVID-related protocols and infection control safety guidelines. Because unlike the larger skilled nursing facilities that have received CARES Act funding because they're federally regulated, but these larger organizations were also receiving guidelines from the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, but also the local Healthcare Association of Hawaii. These smaller adult residential care homes and community care family foster homes didn't have the benefit of that guidance or the resources that these larger facilities were receiving. The reason this became an important issue for us to address was there's about 47 nursing homes in comparison to 433 adult residential care homes or ARCHs, 18 assisted living, and 1,229 community care foster care homes. So what we realized is that of the 20,800 plus long-term care residents statewide, 4,000 of them, about 4,300 resided in nursing homes, but roughly 8,400 were in these community residential settings where they weren't, didn't have the benefit of their providers having access to protective care, guidance, and such. So what we were able to do was advocate, which is one of the things that's really important part of what AARP does. As I said, we advocate for issues and on issues that are important to older adults. And so we were able to work along with others and advocate for about $61 million allocated by the legislature. These adult residential care homes and community care homes were among the providers that could now get access to that funding because these smaller organizations could not access CARES Act funding. The other thing that we did was we convened a group of healthcare administrators and educators, physicians and nurses, and we, together with them, developed COVID safety protocols and procedures manual for those home operators because what CMS and Health Department was providing was insufficient. It didn't work for these smaller organizations. And the Department of Health was great about then sending it out to all of these small care homes. So again, from AARP's perspective, that advocacy for those care homes was all around the 8,000 plus residents in those facilities. One of the other things we did, and you folks were probably very aware and participated in, is that many kupuna during COVID were not able to gain access to food, or there was food insecurity, partly because they either didn't want to go out, the shelves were being emptied pretty quickly, and those types of things. So we worked to, with the City and County of Honolulu, mobilized about 40 plus providers through a grassroots effort to begin a massive island-wide food distribution to seniors in need. And within 9 months, over 1.2 million meals were delivered to seniors on Oahu. The coalition also was able to leverage funds, raising about $3 million, including CARES Act funds. So again, that was really around that particular need. But what was great about that, and I really believe this is a model for us going forward, is that coalition then also continued to do food security, but we created another kind of branch and focused on the issue of vaccination. So again, that was everything from kupuna call centers, getting vaccination occurring in public housing, senior facilities, and a broad range of a lot of organizations who are out there that did a great job. So if you don't know, Hawaii has one of the highest vaccination rates, especially for older adults. I'm going to move along as quickly as I can. Don't want to take up all the time you've got here. On the issue of livable communities, probably a little bit harder for people to wrap their heads around what does that actually mean. AARP partners with the World Health Organization on what's called age-friendly program, age-friendly cities program, and we're a catalyst for Honolulu's application for that particular program. And we work in about 8 different domains that fall within that, especially transportation, open space, and communication. We have staff and volunteers that participate on the Oahu Metropolitan Planning Organization, the Hawaii Highway Safety Council, the Honolulu's Vision Zero Action Planning Committee. So where we can, we try to get ourselves at least at the table where we can help make a difference, where the laws in that particular case may impact either at the state level or county level. Again, predominantly here in Honolulu. A real important thing that would like to let you folks know about is Senior Planet. It's a Senior Planet by AARP. Senior Planet is a new affiliate of AARP. And what they do is they provide free training, technology training for older adults. The training is available for Zoom on a daily basis via Zoom. AARP, ourselves here in Hawaii, hosted a 6-part series, and hundreds of local residents tuned into the 6 Friday afternoon events. The topics ranged from how to use Zoom. Interestingly, that's the platform that was used to teach it. I didn't get to see how that one worked, but it evidently went really well. And then how to protect, and even how to protect your digital identity. An important thing, as more older adults are going online, we want to make sure, again, fraud is a big issue, so we want to make sure if you're going online, you know how to protect yourself. The other area I won't spend too much time on, but again, we have a lot of resources. So one of the things that we saw through the vaccination issue of kupuna having to get online to register for vaccinations is the fact that many didn't have access, didn't know how to access the technology. So we were focusing a good bit on digital resources for kupuna. We have a digital resource guide, and we also developed a kupuna digital inclusion roadmap that we hope decision makers will look at and understand that the needs, many of our youth have access, maybe not enough in their homes, but in their schools, it's a little bit more challenging for older adults. So we've been focusing a lot on our participation and our driving of that. So there are those guidebooks available. So Carol or Pat, if that's something you folks are interested in, let us know and we can get a bunch of those to you folks. Again, that's really important insofar as the resource directory is really a way for kupuna to look through a hard copy document, to look at all the different types of digital resources that are available to them that they can utilize. It's a little bit Honolulu heavy, so we're still working on trying to get more from the neighbor islands. Another really important one is this last one here, community challenge grants. I say that because the deadlines, we're going to be launching that pretty soon. The deadline will be September 1. It's a way for us to provide money to local nonprofit organizations who want to do quick action projects to help make the community better. So when I say quick action, the award occurs in the fall, and the project pretty much has to be done by the end of the year, although we have had prior events where it's extended. Prior grants we've given to the Ha'ula Community Resilience Hub, the Krause Family Foundation on Molokai, the Rice Street Downtown Business Association. So these are really projects around kind of making a difference in the community. I'm going to move forward, and Carol and company, I don't know if people are raising their hands, so I'm just going to work through this and take some questions later. This is just another resource around that's available. Lots and lots of information available via AARP. And a key piece for us is the work in communities and how age-friendly, livable communities are important for all ages, you know, whether they're older adults or young families. So it includes the latest research, provides a livable community index. There's free tools on so how to do walk audits. So we've done walk audits here in Honolulu. That's basically looking at the timing of traffic lights, where the crosswalks, where crosswalks are located. So those types of audits. And again, I talked about the community challenge grant. So AARP.org/livable has a great deal of resources related to that type of information. Another really important one for AARP is veterans. So if you work with or interact with veterans or their families, there's a lot of resources. AARP just has a long history of supporting the United States Armed Forces and launched the Veterans Family and Their Families, Veteran Military and Their Families Initiative. For us, we call it VMF in 2018. And it's just a really important way for us to try to reach out to veterans, which is really, if you don't know, hard group to tap, especially those from some of the earlier wars like Vietnam and such. Just really a hard group to reach out to. But the areas include caregiving, fighting fraud, connecting veterans and their families to earn service benefits, which is very important after all the years of service, to ensure they and their family members are in fact accessing those benefits. So this is an area, again, we've also done local events with veterans, whether it's been here in Honolulu. Basically, we'll do events with veterans across the state. Here again are important resources, so I leave this up for a little bit. There's online services, so the Veterans Career Advantage course basically is an online self-paced course for veterans to use for skill building for the workforce, and pretty much helping them transition or learn skills that are going to be helpful in the workforce. There's also a veterans vets job toolkit, and that's again all available at the AARP.org/veterans. And that particular vets job toolkit is available to veterans and their military spouses, and it's a job search site specifically for that. And it's, again, businesses that are specifically interested in hiring veterans can go through that particular portal to have that access. You know, again, like many of us, if we're looking for another career after having been in the one we've got, there's also assistance in doing resumes. And then there's the veteran, as I said, the Veterans and Military Families Health Benefits Navigator. That's an important thing. It's called the Health Benefits Navigator because it's a one-stop resource for military families to ask the right questions, to get the basic information they need to access health benefits and caregiving for veterans. So again, just really important resources, just a whole lot out there that I hope, again, if you work with veterans, have veterans in your family, or again, in the community, this is an important one. And of course, as we know, it's election season. So AARP, you know, has been very interested in ensuring that, one, that people take the opportunity to vote as one of the most important privileges, rights that we have. So we want to be a trusted source in providing information. I didn't mention earlier, but AARP is nonpartisan. So we don't get involved in party issues, surprisingly, even though I was involved. I had to resign from my work with one particular party because we are nonpartisan, and I can tell you honestly that that's a critical and very important focus for AARP. But one of the things we wanted to make sure was that those who are running for office understand the importance of older voters and our issues, and that we are looking to hold them accountable to the promises they make. Older voters do make a difference because we tend to vote a lot more than the younger folks, but let's hope those younger folks start getting a lot more engaged as well. So we have debates coming up for the lieutenant governor on July 12th and the governor for July 13th. Looking forward and having those. So again, that's just another way for us. Another key piece, although not here, we want to make sure, and let me just go back, is that people know what they need to do to make sure their ballots aren't spoiled. So we're going to be doing a couple of media campaigns related to that, because the last thing we want is for someone to put their, to vote and not realize they haven't taken the steps to make sure their vote counts. So we're putting out information about what are some of the common things people tend to do that spoils their ballot. And then this is kind of the national resource side, our publications. The ads and such in these publications are what tend to help fund all of what AARP does. But what I find from many of our members, and this is not a membership pitch by any means, is that the AARP magazine and bulletin are like treasured. People absolutely love going through them. Again, we're still in that age of liking the hard copy stuff because there's just tons of information and research in the work that AARP does. Most everything we do is highly researched. Again, because we want to be a trusted source, we have to make sure the information we're providing is valid. I just, anyway, I love that AARP magazine cover. Then locally on the media front, so that's kind of the national media piece, as you see. Locally, we just do a lot. I mean, I hope at some point people don't get sick of seeing me on TV. During the pandemic, I was on quite a bit of news related to the vaccine issues, but we do a lot to try to get information out. If anything, that's the one thing to me that I also learned, Carol, when I was at DCCA, is if people don't know what we do and who we are, they're not going to access the services. So reaching out to people like yourselves is just really helpful for getting the word out. Our Speakers Bureau is another, I think, valuable resource. We have volunteers who are trained and can present. So again, also for you or other organizations that you're with, if you want your members or community to have the information that we provide, we can schedule really these smaller meetings, smaller presentations as needed through our Speakers Bureau. It's really an invaluable resource. But also, if you'd like to become a member of our Speakers Bureau, we'd also be happy to have you consider that as well. And again, I think I mentioned volunteerism and community partners is really the way that AARP makes things happen. Again, I mentioned we have 5 staff. So the work that I mentioned all along and all that we did was through partnerships and volunteers. And again, it's really for us how we further the work of our founder and recognizing her thoughts around, how we all pitch in and make a difference. And of course, that fits very nicely with Hawaii in our care for one another. So again, if people are interested in more information, Jackie Boland is our Community Outreach Director here at AARP. And this is her contact information here, but also here is our AARP overall email. If you want to send a general email to AARP, or if you want to be a volunteer or partner with AARP, Jackie Boland's the right person to help you with that. Thank you, folks. That's my long-winded presentation.
Okay.
Thank you, Billy.
Okay. So the floor is now open for questions. Please leave your questions in the chat box, and I'll read them aloud, just for the recording, just for recording purposes. So go ahead and please post your questions right now, if you have any.
While you're thinking of questions, might I add, I believe, Desmond, correct me if I'm wrong, that this presentation will also be available later on the Senior Council Division website.
Yes. So
Incredible amount of information there. The breadth, width of what you folks do is absolutely amazing. So we really appreciate. I didn't realize half of everything that it encompasses, and thank you for that.
No, I didn't either, Carol. Before I joined this wonderful group, and again, it's the key piece for us, folks, are organizations like yours. You know, clearly you're interested in making a difference. You already do in the work that you do. This is just how do we further some of that, you know, like you, Hawaii's home, and all that we can do to kind of make a difference in the lives of one another is key. And that's, again, really what drives AARP in our work. And we know that's what drives you folks as well. So definitely interested in beyond these types of things. If there are other issues in the future where we can work together, I'd be very interested in finding out what that could be.
Thank you. Desmond, any questions, or is everybody still trying to digest all of this information?
I know, I am so sorry.
Fabulous.
Yeah, looks like there isn't any questions yet, but please put them
Looks like
in.
John's trying to say something. John, you're muted.
I have everyone on mute, so I.
Oh, John
Yeah,
was trying to say something.
Yeah.
John Burgess.
Can you unmute John Burgess, Desmond?
I can unmute him.
Yeah, having people ask the questions out loud, Desmond, is an option too. If the chat is
Unmute. Thank you. John, you're unmuted.
Okay, just saying hello.
John.
I see you're headquartered here on Mission Street in San Francisco. AARP, this AARP program.
Oh no, we're right here in Honolulu, Hawaii.
Well, yeah, I just saw, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's definitely.
Never mind.
In some ways, we're everywhere. So we do have state offices across the country. Our office is actually right downtown, 101 Bishop Street, the American Savings Tower. So we're close enough to you all, you know, where you're situated. And then Carol, folks, I didn't talk about this as much, but we also have what we call community presence sites, where AARP works with volunteers and communities in certain communities. So we have East Hawaii and Maui, where we work with a group of volunteers to specifically do activities in those areas, and much of the types of services that I talk about are available on those in Hilo and Maui. Looking to expand that if we can, but that's kind of also where we're at. We call them community presence sites.
What sort of volunteers? What's provided at those locations?
So with those volunteers, they also help with events, conferences, workshops on many of the similar issues on Maui and Hilo. In the Hilo area in particular, although we can do and have done some things over in Kona. but many of the similar events. So we'll have, as I think you might have noticed with the spotlight events, we're going to be doing a, we'll have the Think of Your Future workshop in person. So our volunteers on Maui will help with that one. That's starting July 30th. And then also the Brett Johnson will be doing those on the neighbor islands. We're looking at trying to build up a group for Kauai, to maybe do more there as well.
How about Molokai?
Oh yeah, that one I'll go to myself.
Ah, good idea. Thank you. I
Happy to go
guess,
there.
do you folks
Happy to go
need
there.
volunteers?
Yep.
If anybody's interested.
Kelly, if you want to, you can also post your sources in the chat box just so people can have immediate access to it right now. But in the meantime, I guess Carol, you can close us out right now.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. Like I said, if your head's spinning like mine is with all this information, be sure to go back perhaps later on so that you can write down some of these resources and identify specific areas that are of interest to you or where you need assistance. So again, thank you all for attending, and thank you so much, Kayla E. Good to see you again.
Same here.
Take care, everyone.